So again, I'm Alex. I have a YouTube and Instagram, Lovesugarshow, and we are joined today with Dan, who is going to be doing the interview with us. So appreciate you taking your time for doing this.
Oh, happy to be here.
So the first question that I ask anyone that I interview is, how's everything going, not just in your music life, but also personally as well?
It's good. I live in Toronto, up in Canada here, so it's been nice in a good way because I don't really deal well with the hot weather, and we've been having unusually cold weather. So I take that as a win for any day that I can get. But other than that, things are good. It's an exciting time to be out doing things. I can tell you that.
Very true. When you say it's like abnormally, like I guess a little bit cooler, what temperatures are you guys experiencing now?
It's 17 degrees Celsius today. Um,
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but like that's pretty cold for the time of year for us. Like, not to say that it gets blistering hot by any means, like it's not like we're comparing to Texas or anything, but it's definitely cold for what is normal for the season.
Yeah, definitely. I'm in Tennessee. That's like 92, so I think it's pretty hot and really humid, so just kind of crazy.
Yeah, I remember I've been to um Tennessee a bunch of times, and I remember it being way hotter than I expected it to be. I
Yeah.
don't know why. Like, I don't know if that's a normal way of feeling, but every time I've been there, I just feel like I'm overheating more than I should be. Uh,
Yeah, for sure. So let's go ahead and talk about this album here. What headspace was the band kind of in when the album was being written?
I think given the time frame, it's probably pretty fair to say that we were all pretty stuck in kind of an anxious, isolated, kind of depressed sort of space because all of this was going on during the COVID lockdowns. And the Canadian lockdown, comparatively to the US lockdown, was a very different experience. We were
Mhm.
locked down for a lot longer. We had more of them kind of going on. And so there was a wide range of time where me and Mikey and Alex weren't even in the same room together while we were working on this stuff. We'd be sending files back and forth and having WhatsApp chats and like trying to find ways to be creative while still being respectful to what was going on. I can
Mhm.
only speak for myself in the sense of of just extreme isolation through all of that kind of stuff. So I think that definitely bleeds out into the music. I think you can kind of hear that bleak, uncomfortable kind of vibe to Ritual Decay and to kind of everything that we do.
Mhm.
But that's like when I think back to what was going on there, that's really what I think of as just like anxiety and isolation and depression and like that kind of thing.
Do you think that helped create the album into something better or maybe just something different?
I think that it definitely funneled its way in. I know that like the process of writing, the process of recording, the process of going through this whole thing has been a little bit of a cathartic process for us. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know that it would have come out in the same way had life been normal, like 2019 versus 2020. But also, like, I think you kind of have to deal with what you've got in front of you, and life isn't always peachy just because something is going on. So, the experience that we dealt with is the only one that I know, but I feel like we still would have ended up somewhere, because I don't think you can play this type of music and not have emotion to it.
Right. So when you went into, I guess, create this album, did you have like a clear vision in mind, or did that kind of develop as the album got finished?
We had no idea what we were trying to get ourselves into. The first meeting of this band was in a park in the city here, where we were all sitting like super far apart trying to discuss what we wanted to do. And we had, I think, one rehearsal all together. And
Mhm.
one of the people that we were involved in decided they didn't want to do it anymore. And then we got locked down again. And so there was really no chance to kind of like talk about a feeling as far as a genre goes. There was not really anything like that because there was
Mhm.
just so much going on that it was a drive to create more than a drive to calculate, if that makes sense. Um, That being said, as we kind of touched on in the last question, I don't think that we were going to create a ska record or like a pop punk record or something like that. There was no happiness to kind of build off of there. So I think it does definitely make sense that we ended up in the world that we did, but we definitely didn't start out trying to do that.
Okay. So when you said like things kind of, especially before like the band kind of got things together, you said a member left the band?
There was just someone else that we had wanted to or had originally planned to work with, and their schedule and their kind of wants in life just didn't align with what we were trying to do. They're still a very good friend of ours,
Hmm.
but also like it's kind of tough to go through a situation that is not normal for everybody and have
Yeah.
everybody be normal. Like everybody, I think, and I'm sure you could vouch for the same thing. Everybody that we knew was kind of going through their own hell in a roundabout way. Some people did
Yeah.
really well with it, but it was still like not good. And it's really tough to kind of take judgment on anybody for how they kind of got their way through that. But I think that,
Yeah.
them not like being okay with not being involved with what's going on was also their way of like I've got to bear the brunt of this pandemic, and I need to take care of myself, which there you can't fault anybody for that.
Oh yeah.
um
Sure.
but they like it wasn't like this was a big overhead of like, oh my god, what are we going to do? It was just kind of like,
Mhm.
okay, well, this person doesn't want to be here, let's keep going, kind of thing.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I was normal before COVID, but I like that I can blame it on COVID now.
I think it's a different no, nobody is normal, let's be honest, but I
That's
think there was a different version of normal than what we have now. I think truthfully one of the positives that's come out of the pandemic, which is not across the board, but I think people became more comfortable with being weird, being their version of weird, being okay with, investing some time in the things that they like. Because
mhm.
I know a lot, one of the things that I came out of this with is like really not taking for granted things that I took for granted before. Like I was in a band previous to LowHeaven that toured a lot. And I
Mhm.
remember being home, like the pandemic was the longest I had been home since I was 18, like in consecutive time. And that was
Oh.
really fucked up. So, excuse my language.
Yeah.
Um, but that's where it comes from now for me is like every time we get to go on tour, I'm just grateful for it. I treat it in a different manner. And I think that probably floods out to a good number of us that didn't become insane. Uh,
Yeah.
and, I think that's a really good thing because I just look at a lot of people around me doing the things that they care about. And I think that's beautiful.
For sure. So kind of like, I guess, going into that, the next question, are there any tracks on this album that are like personal to you?
Lyrically speaking, the entire record really is. The lyrics on Ritual Decay, the lyrics on Collapse were a metaphorically directed kind of biography of what was going on for myself. Not directly as like this happened and then this happened, but like
Right.
kind of a scale of emotions of going through being isolated, kind of having the rest of my world explode all around me. Things that
Mhm.
I, had come to count on were just gone, and having to really like reboot what was happening. And I think that that plays a significant role in it, but also, I think for everybody else as well too, there's a lot of that channeling of emotions into everything, into the music, into the creation of all of this stuff. And I think it's obvious for all of us. Like when we go back and listen to it, everybody's got their parts, everybody's got their things. But I
Yeah.
think that, every time you revisit a song, you get the feeling that was there. I know I do for sure. Like I have a hard time listening to a good chunk of the record just because it's kind of like picking at a scab a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's really tough to kind of handle. So,
For sure. Especially when it wasn't the happiest moments either.
no, we make our way through though, right?
We have to. Life, unfortunately, life doesn't care. It just keeps going with or without us.
It's true. It's true.
So when you're like creating this album, did you like start like the creation around emotion? Like I want this emotion to come out in the song, or did it start with a riff and then that riff you're like, okay, these emotions are attached to this riff now, and then the creation kind of started from there?
I think it's kind of different all over the board. For me, again, I can only speak to myself. For me, it's kind of sometimes I have like a something in my head that I'm hearing, and I have to turn that into something. With the writing for this band, especially, you know, most days I would wake up, have a shower, and then I would sit in my bedroom office all day,
Oh, wow.
and that was my entire thing, right? So I didn't have a
Mm-hmm.
choice but to kind of channel what was going on into the kind of one thing that was functioning. We wrote a lot of songs and we did a lot of demoing, and like there are
Mm-hmm.
versions of like the first demo of a song that sounds nothing like what ended up on the record. But I think there was no real choice but to have to create through all of this. So it was every possible aspect that it could. Oh, I've got this vocal melody. How can I write around this? Okay, I spent the last 4 hours last night not sleeping and writing lyrics, and I gotta write something that fits these lyrics. I gotta write the song that fits the vibe of the words that have been written. Oh, I gotta write
Mm-hmm.
6 fucking heavy songs, and now I gotta write lyrics around it. Like it was all just like a perfect storm of chaos. Um, I'm not sure that the other guys in the band would answer that in the same way, but also like, I wrote all the lyrics to the record, so that's always my perspective of like there was kind of a double
Mm-hmm.
responsibility there. So,
Right.
but yeah, I there's not one simple answer for that. It's just pure chaos.
So were you kind of working on the record the whole way through COVID, or did you work on it like halfway through there and then the rest like at a different time?
So when COVID first hit, um, I think just kind of like everybody else, we thought it was going to be a little blip and then we'd sort of move on.
Mm-hmm.
So for probably the first maybe 2 to 3 months, it was me teaching myself how to use recording software and making like dumb little songs about my cat, or like just kind of that sort of thing, thinking like, hey, we're going to get back to whatever's going on.
Right.
And then the more and more that we kind of saw, instead of things kind of loosening, we saw things getting tighter and tighter and tighter. I think that's when I realized that there was kind of a need to buckle down a little bit more. But also,
Mm-hmm.
like I've said, it was also a very response to everything going like all at once, kind of
Mm-hmm.
around me. And, music has been such a major part of my life in so many different ways. Like it's kind of the thing to turtle into when there's stuff going on that you can't control or things that you can't process or whatever else. So it just became the focus of a lot of days. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so it became, I would say, very, very serious, like an almost everyday thing, probably by the middle of 2020 or so, maybe creeping towards the end of the summer. And then we spent like a year and a half just kind of doing this, kind of demoing and going back through and doing all of that stuff. And like
Right.
I've probably got 70 demos on my computer and like a bunch of songs that we didn't even use that are just sitting in here.
Oh,
Um, yeah, so I think that, like I said, it kind of became the mission at that point where I was like, I need to do something positive.
yeah. So I have to ask, I know you said that you made up some demos about your cat. Are those ever going to be maybe released at some point as like extra bonus tracks?
I doubt it because if I'm being very, very honest, most of the time when I do something like that, it's like 45 seconds. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really just me trying to make myself laugh. And those tend to happen at like 2 o'clock in the morning when I can't sleep.
Yeah.
So I've got to like do something. And there's three songs because my cat hates me. Like this she does not like me at all. She likes Mikey, our bass player in our band, a lot, but really doesn't like anybody. And so a lot of the songs are just like me making fun of her to make myself laugh, but they're like, they they sound. I mean, this is a band in Canada, but like a bunch of them sound like a Great Big Sea song, which is very like, Maritimes Canadian, like very specific kind of vibe. I think Americans would just be like, "What the hell is that?" But it's just goofy stuff like that. And it was also, like I said, me learning how to use this program. So it's like,
Right.
oh, I'm playing guitar, but then I've also sampled in like nine different instruments that don't sound right at all. So
Yeah.
every once in a while I listen to them and kind of giggle, but for the most part, like if somebody heard it, they'd be like, this guy wrote that stuff over there and he's putting this shit out. Like, no way, you know?
Well, a tip, most intoxicated Americans like literally anything. So,
That's fair. That's fair. That's not a bad point. I think, I think if Americans got a chance to travel Canada, they would fall in love with Eastern Canada because it is fucking great.
yeah.
And everybody there is kind of like Canada's friendly. The East Coast is really friendly. But they've just got a vibe on like how they do stuff there. Like when you go play out there, shows are different. Like
Right.
people are really, really into music across the board. And I think Americans, especially if we're talking like Southern Americans, have a pretty good idea of like Canada from TV. Whereas if you go to the East Coast, you're just like, this is a different world and it's all good. Like there's nothing bad to say about the Maritimes at all.
So what you're saying is we should all move to Canada.
Our
Yeah.
immigration process would be a headache, and we probably wouldn't take about 70% of you, but that's just a different thing altogether.
Yeah. So talking about Mikey, Mikey said in the bio that the song Chemical Pattern embodies the team structured chaos. Can you kind of tell me your thoughts about that?
Yeah, we all come from kind of different musical backgrounds within like the heavy sphere of things. But there are some bands that we really kind of united over, and
Mhm.
it's kind of the interesting differences between our tastes that kind of created certain aspects to it. So Mikey, being a little all over the board with what he's into, would sometimes bring in an influence or like would write a part that really wouldn't be something that I would ever think of. So like the structured chaos theory for us is one of those things where it's like bringing in an influence that the other people wouldn't necessarily think of, or bringing in a part that is so identifiably that this person that it kind of makes sense. When it comes to the record, it's a little bit more of like, you know, our songs are turning a little bit on a dime. Like there's definitely heavy, but there's certain parts where you're like, oh, I didn't expect that to happen. Or oh, this dynamic change is very drastic. And that is
Mhm.
definitely something that we really wanted to encompass, especially with our live show. We almost like exaggerate that a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it's definitely an obvious and tangible aspect to our music that we wanted to bring in. And cancer, or excuse me, chemical pattern is definitely a good one like that because it does have a vibe for like the first kind of part of this of the song, and then it just dropped off a hill.
Mhm.
And we all really love that, so it's nice to kind of exemplify that in such a drastic way.
For sure. I actually listened to the album. I really enjoyed it. I think it's very much so like an adventure. Um, and I was not having the best day when I listened to it. And I don't know, like it's maybe it's like when you feel bad and you listen to songs that also like have that kind of like sad emotional vibe to it. Like it makes you feel better because your emotions are going into the music and you're like, okay, I feel so much better.
It's like the what I can't remember what they call it, but it's kind of like when you have somebody and you discover somebody else is having a similar thing. The fact that there's company there just makes it a little bit easier, you know. But there's a term for it, and I'm terrible for remembering these things. So
All good.
somebody can Google it and put it in the comments or something.
So, how would you describe this album to a fan that hasn't had the chance to listen to it?
Um, to me, it's um, actually this is a good question. No one's asked me this yet. Um, I would say that it's like a an emotional panic attack.
Mhm.
It is very heavy into the negative emotions that are going on, but musically speaking, within this world that we created, it's very diverse.
Mhm.
So I can't speak for everybody else. I am very prone to panic attacks, and they always happen in kind of different ways. And
Mhm.
so, when you look at how Ritual Decay is put together, the track list, the everything, there is obviously a cohesiveness to it, but the way things are done in such a sporadic and kind of spread out way that I feel like those things kind of meet together. Again, also
Mhm.
speaking as the lyricist for the record, I know what I'm saying there. Like I know the things that I'm communicating within that, and there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of depression, there's a lot of that sort of stuff going on. So I would struggle to describe it without including that. Um, I hope that people are able to kind of get a hold of it though, and like create their version of what that is. I really don't want to taint somebody and be like, this is the most depressing record you've ever heard. But at the same time, if somebody's in that position, I hope that they can hear this record and just like we had already just talked about, like you're not alone in feeling these ways.
Yeah, for sure. Especially nowadays. I feel like everyone's kind of struggling after, COVID, like mental health has kind of become more talked about, which I think is really good.
Hmm. Talking about anything negative in a way that releases the stress involved with it is such a good thing. Alex in our band actually is a psychotherapist and works,
Oh, cool.
yeah, and I will tell you, especially for his kind of journey through all of this, our band is very cognizant of that. Not
Hmm.
only just because he's there and is, a big proponent of like taking care of yourself, but also we've fostered a very direct and very supportive communication environment within this band because we're all cognizant that we're
Hmm.
dealing with all of these different things, and we really take it seriously to be part of everybody else's kind of like we want to be the support unit to everybody else in the band, and we're all very cognizant of like how we can do that, and having conversations even when it's tough to make sure people know that like that everybody else that's here is there for you. And I hope that that spreads out as far as we can, not just from us but just in the world of like people being
Hmm.
okay talking about this stuff, because there's so much like isolated suffering that goes on, and that's heartbreaking to even think about.
Do you think that this album could be a part of that, like the healing process for people who do suffer with like anxiety and depression?
I hope so. I think that music is one of the best avenues for something like that. I think art in general is, whatever
Mhm.
version of art that you're doing. I know, like I kind of mentioned earlier, like it's very tough for me to listen to this. It's very tough for me to kind of revisit a lot of what was going on there. But if my
Mhm.
suffering means that someone else can feel okay about that, then we hit a home run. Aaron Judge cranked the ball out of here. Like we're good as far as that goes. And
Right.
I want people to take whatever they can out of whatever art's there. It's not my position to say like everybody should be healed because I said this, but like if that can be a byproduct of what we've created, then that's worth all the time in the world.
Well, I think it's definitely worth saying, like, it's definitely a tool because, music is really healing. And I think I have interviewed quite a few metal artists, and I love the fact that they always try to talk about things that are real and, they really care and want to make changes in the world. And I think that's just really beautiful.
I think so too. I think aggressive music does attract a wide variety of people. And I think especially nowadays when you see all the horrible things that are going on in the world, and there is a widespread community of people who have an understanding of how things should be. It's just a beautiful thing that we all correlate seemingly around a broad spectrum of heavy music. Because I have friends that exist in other worlds, like are indie rock
Mhm.
bands and all this other stuff, and they have their version of that. But I feel like, at least in my experience, the like punk hardcore metal world is way more accepting of these things and way more willing to take the time to address them. And
Mhm.
I hope that continues, like I hope this doesn't just end at a certain point. We keep kind of branching out as much as we can, because that's, part of being a human at that point.
And also, no pressure with this question, but what song are you most excited for fans to hear and why?
There's a few on the record that I'm really excited to play, because we do have a little bit of a way of like how we achieve and therefore execute songs live that are a little bit different than how we do it on record.
Hmm.
Like Manic Grace, if we get a place where we could fit that into a set list, I'm really excited about that one because honestly, like it's one of my favorite songs on the record, but it's also got the potential to be one of those like intense punching you in the face kind of songs
Hmm.
that has a dynamic track to it. So that being said, playing anything new is just kind of exciting. We've Collapse came out almost 2 years ago at this point, and we've been playing those songs a lot.
Yeah.
And we always find a way to do things a little bit differently or toss in something a little unusual or whatever. But I'm kind of excited to break out of that mold a little bit and just start playing some new stuff. I think Chemical Pattern is going to be really fun to play
Hmm.
live, and rehearsing it has even been kind of fun, which is like I love practice. I know that most musicians don't like practicing. I love the ritual of like playing the same, getting the muscle memory up and playing all these things. But
Hmm.
playing Chemical Pattern is really fun. It's a lot of words, it's a lot of vocal stuff going on like that. But just the process of playing it, like there's an accomplished feeling when you get to the end of that song and you're like, that's how it should be.
Yeah.
And I've just been really enjoying that process.
So what's next for the band after the album releases?
I think we're really anxious to just get out and start touring and probably touring a lot.
Hmm.
We have been sitting on this record. It was recorded at the start of 2022. So we've been sitting, waiting for the
Yeah.
chance to release all of this stuff. And now that we're finally in the position to be able to do that, we've got a good core of people around us. I think now we're all just anxious to be like, let's play shows. Let's get out and tour.
Hmm.
We've got some stuff scheduled that we've kind of already announced, and there's more things kind of moving along. And I think the hope is to just continue to like spread our wings and be able to get as far as we can, get to as many places as we can, start hitting people over the head with a bucket, just kind of taking these things on. Because like the start of 2022 is an insane amount of time to just be like, this record's
Yeah.
done, let's figure it out. But it just took that time to find the right way to do everything. So that's really exciting. And also just like very truthfully, like we're slowly rolling things out. We're slowly sharing the record with people and sharing the singles and
Hmm.
seeing the reaction to how people are connecting with our art and with our just the music that we're creating has been a really like validating and beautiful experience. So I also just trying to sit in that and remind ourselves that like, take every day for what it is, take stock of the grace that you're being given and enjoy that. So that's also part of it too, of just reminding ourselves that like, enjoy that our friends and us are all doing these cool things instead of just being like, we've got to get to work.
Yeah.
So a balance between those.
And I know you mentioned hitting people in the head with buckets. Do they have to pay extra for that, or is that included with their ticket?
A metaphorical bucket, a metaphor. I don't want to hit anybody with anything. You guys don't have free healthcare down there, so you get hurt and you're mortgaging your house, and I think that's a problem. But uh, metaphorically speaking, you get whatever you need with the ticket paid.
Awesome. So I do have one last question here for you. Is there
Of
anything
course.
that you would like to say to like past fans, new fans, anyone interested in listening to this album, or anything you want to say to your bandmates?
I wish my bandmates would buy me dinner more often. I think that that's a very warranted thing to have happen. It's definitely not going to happen, but it'd be great if it did. I think for everybody else, like it sounds kind of cliche to say it, but we're just happy that you're here. We're happy that you're along for our version of this. There's so much music out there in such an intense way that it's beautiful when you can connect with somebody. It's beautiful when you connect with different bands and you have these
Mhm.
friendships and relationships that form over it. And as much as you want to be able to like be successful at the things that you go after, it really is about the human connection. And I think that we've really made an effort to be the best band that we can be, but also to be the people that are accepting of the people that find us. We want
Right.
our crowd to be the mix of whoever is here. We're not here to dismiss anybody. We're not here to not accept anybody. We want you for who you are, for where you are, and we're just happy that you're involved in that. And I hope that everybody can feel that way and that music continues to branch out in that way.
That is really beautiful. I think it's like I said, for anyone who hasn't, when this album drops, you definitely need to get your hands on it. It is very well written, and like I said, it's like a journey. And especially like, I don't know, just having such a bad day and I listen to it and I'm like, wow, I feel so much better. Like it feels like this album understands me, as maybe crazy as that sounds, but
Not crazy. That's exactly what we're after.
well, for anyone else who's interested, the album is called Ritual Decay. It does release on August 29th. I will actually leave a link underneath this video, so it's super easy for you to click on. You should definitely get your hands on it, and it's releasing through MNRK Heavy. So make sure to not miss out on this one.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Alex. And hopefully we see you at a show, and everybody else, whoever wants to be there, we're happy to have you.
Since there's no buckets being hit over my head, I appreciate you looking out for my healthcare, because you're right, healthcare that's another video, but definitely.
Yeah. I like, not to say that Canadian healthcare is amazing, but I don't know how you guys do it. I don't know how, like, terrifying. Yeah, you're right. This could be a completely different podcast. We could go through the whole thing, but I'm glad you all figure it out.
Well, thank you so much for taking your time for doing this interview, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Alex.
All right, take care.
Take care.
Hey everyone, just want to say thank you so much for watching my videos. Goodbye.